remember opening the front door and seeing a line of rose petals from the front door all the way up the stairs towards the master bedroom. As I walked up the stairs and turned the corner, I saw her. She was wearing her full wedding dress with the gown in front of her face and was sitting/leaning against the bedroom door and had a big red spot on her chest where she had clearly shot herself. Hello, everybody. My name is Colin Whittington. I'm the CEO and founder of Recruiting Heroes LLC and also your host of the Recruiting Heroes Show. Welcome to episode 12. As you can tell by the intro, we are talking about a pretty heavy topic, and I'm going to be diving into the 3 worst calls for service that I have had during my career and the impact they have had on me and my career and my decision to leave law enforcement, and also why these types of calls can have an impact on other officers as well as they go through their career. So let's get right into it. Hello, everybody. Welcome to episode 12 of the Recruiting Heroes Show. As I already mentioned, my name is Colin Whittington. I am the CEO and founder of Recruiting Heroes LLC. We are a national employment agency dedicated to helping our law enforcement officers and military veterans with their career transition to the private sector. If you are in law enforcement or the military considering a career transition, I hope you do reach out to us. We love helping you and helping our heroes with their transition to the private sector. As always, we're giving away some free things today. So go to recruitingheroesllc.com. Go to our candidate services page and scroll all the way down past our wonderful services. Check those out as well. But at the bottom of that page are our free downloads, which include our Heroes Job Search Guide, our resume template, a guide to help you figure out what career to even go after, career and certifications advice, and a lot more. So go to Recruiting Heroes LLC to check it out. I do also want to mention that we are having a fun event this Thursday, February 6th at 8 p.m. EST time, Eastern Standard Time. It's called Career and Cocktails. So we're going to be diving into the transition from law enforcement or the military to the private sector and talking about what industries and what companies are excited about hiring law enforcement officers and military veterans. And of course, the fun part, you bring your own cocktails with you and we can all have a drink together and talk about this amazing topic. And if you're interested in joining, go to recruitingheroesllc.com. On the front page or home page, there's our events tab where you can register for this free event. Again, it's February 6th at 8 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. So hope to see you there. But let's get right into this topic because it's one that, it's super important. Our law enforcement officers and military veterans as well go through a lot of trauma throughout their career. I think they say that the average citizen has 1 or 2 traumatic experiences in their entire life. For a law enforcement officer, that's a pretty calm weekend, I would say, if you only have 1 or 2. So they're going through dozens, hundreds, or thousands of calls like that every single year, or in every single career. And I want to talk about the 3 calls that had the most impact on me during my career, and maybe you can relate to them as well. So I want to start off by really quickly thanking you again for being here. I hope you will like this video, share it with other law enforcement officers who might benefit from it, and do subscribe to the channel as well. It does help me grow and helps me reach more officers. So the first call for service that I wanted to talk about was one that happened about a year after I left the academy and was cut loose after field training. It was December 20th, 2016. I remember the date to this day. And every single December 20th, it reminds me. And I was about to get off duty. It was 5:45 p.m. and we got off at 6. So I was writing some reports, trying to avoid any kind of calls for service when I heard an assist rescue call come out. And the call notes indicated that a 10-month-old infant had stopped breathing and didn't have a pulse. And I ended up noticing the address that I was just a block or 2 away. I knew that this call would obviously hold me out pretty late if I responded to it, but at the same time, I also understood that I couldn't live with myself if I ended up not trying to go and doing the best I could. So I added myself to the call and responded lights and sirens to the address. And because of how close I was to the home, I was actually there a handful of minutes before EMS or other deputies. So I went to the house, and it must have been a little bit of a gathering because there was about 10 people there or so. And on the living room floor, I saw the 10-month-old baby, and I thought was his dad trying to do CPR on him. So instantly my training kicked in. I told the father to move over, and I started doing CPR. And I had done CPR numerous times already on middle-aged people, elderly people. This was totally different. He was so small. And the feeling of giving CPR to such a small, innocent life was just super powerful, and it just filled me up with like terror, sadness, and a whole lot of other feelings. But I knew I had to do whatever I could to try to save him. So I kept doing CPR. It felt like it went on for hours, right? But I think it was probably only like 2 or 3 minutes before EMS got there, and they ended up taking over. And between our efforts, we were actually able to resuscitate him, get a heartbeat back, and also breathing as well. So they ended up taking him to the hospital, where sadly they found out that he had a heart defect and ended up passing away about 5 days later. This is where the story for me gets tough too. About a few months later, the awards committee for the sheriff's office notified me that I was going to win a life-saving award for this incident. And to this day, that award has never really sat well with me. Yes, I know he was not technically breathing or had a heartbeat when we got there, and then later on he did have a heartbeat, but he ended up still passing away a few days later. So it's just always been one that's really been challenging for me, not really believing that I fully saved his life. I know I did all I could, but at the same time, we didn't save his life. So it's one that's been tough for me. And I think if you talk to any law enforcement officer out there who's been on the job for a handful of years, they'll tell you that anything involving kids is just 10 times worse than the calls for service involving adults. Those are sad as well, but when you see a young kid hurt or killed or just die of natural causes, it's so much sadder. And it was for me, and that was probably one of the most challenging calls in my career. All right, on to call number 2. This is another interesting one. This is actually the very last time I put handcuffs on a suspect. So I was, as a lot of you may know who followed my story, I was in recruiting and background investigations as a supervisor for the last 3 years of my career. So it's not really a position where you have to go hands-on with anybody or you have to arrest anybody. It's very much an office job behind the desk, right? So I carried a gun and had handcuffs on me, but I never used them besides to qualify. Well, I was also the one driving the recruiting car on a daily basis. A nice Dodge Durango with all the wrapping around it, with all the joint Loudoun County Sheriff's Office markings all over it. Well, it was actually the 4th of July. I think it actually may have been the day before, because I think the holiday was a Sunday, so it may have been the day before. I was going to a parade with the recruiting car, so I was driving to the parade, about an hour early, try to get there ahead of time to get lined up and everything. When I heard a call come out for a stabbing. A young woman had called 911 screaming that she was being stabbed by her brother's, by, I think it was a boyfriend of a friend of hers or something like that. I forget the relations, but she was being stabbed. And the dispatcher said the call had actually ended up hanging up, and it was just a deadline. Again, I just happened to be really close by, and again, I was literally, like I mentioned, I was in the recruiting car. So it was a car that had all the sirens and a ton of lights, more lights than a normal cruiser, but also had the wrapping around it. But I knew, again, if I'm close by and if I can help, I need to try to do whatever I can. So I ran lights and sirens in this recruiting car to the address. And it was about a 5-minute drive, so I wasn't as close as with the first call, but running lights and sirens in the recruiting car. Ended up getting on scene just as another officer, I think it was a town officer as well as a state trooper, all arrived at the same time. And as we were getting there, we saw a man shoving a woman's body into a trash can. And there was blood everywhere. He was covered in blood. She was covered in blood. And when he saw us, he kind of stopped and stood up, and he was holding a knife. So, of course, we gun-faced him and told him to drop the knife. And he was screaming that it wasn't him, that was someone else had done it, and he was really not making any sense. So my first thought was that he was EDP, or an emotionally disturbed person, or kind of crazy at the same time. So my thought was, this guy's not going to drop this knife. Like, we're going to have to shoot this guy. Unbelievably, he ended up dropping the knife, thank God. And then we went on in, and I put my handcuffs on him, and ended up pulling up the woman out of the trash can and found that she had been stabbed probably 50 times and was obviously had passed away. And there was blood obviously all around her, up the driveway and in the car. And we ended up finding out that the call had been made from inside the car in the driveway. And the reason why the caller dropped was because the cell phone had fallen into a cup holder, which had then been completely covered in blood, completely filled up in blood, which ended up disconnecting the call. And that was another call for service where it was just seeing how many times she had been stabbed, and the violent nature behind it was just truly, just seeing the really dark side of humanity and seeing the hatred some people have. That was a really challenging one as well. And again, this was a really safe county where we have maybe 2 or 3 homicides a year. So I will say that I didn't respond to nearly as many homicides as somebody working in Detroit or Chicago or other big cities. But for us, that was a pretty big incident in a really safe and wealthy community as well, which made it all the more bizarre. And then the final call for service that probably was the craziest call in my life, and probably the one that I dream about still to this day, and really will never forget. And it's the one I started off this video with, giving a brief synopsis. So we had gotten a call for suicide. A man said he came home and found his wife deceased. That was pretty much all he said. He didn't really say a whole lot more. I think he said that she shot herself. So we had been to suicides before, so we really didn't expect a whole lot of anything out of the normal. I mean, obviously, and no suicide is normal, but we didn't expect anything beyond what we typically see on the suicide. We ended up arriving on scene. Actually, my best friend and I arrived on scene together, and the gentleman was outside the house, and he said that she's inside. That's all he said. So we ended up going to the front door, opened the front door, and the very first thing we saw were a ton of rose petals. Rose petals, probably 2 or 3 feet in width, and then completely covering the floor. You could barely see the floor. So obviously a ton of them. And the rose petals went from the front door to the stairs. So we followed the rose petals, and we went up the stairs, and the rose petals continued all the way up the stairs. And it was one of those turning stairs. So we ended up turning left and doing one more flight of stairs. And as we came up, we saw that the rose petals continued, and it went down a hallway. At the very end of the hallway was a door that was shut, and leaning and sitting against that door was a woman. And she was wearing her wedding dress. And the man had told us ahead of time that they had been married for 20 or 30 years. So a wedding dress that she had saved. So fully in a white wedding dress, and she had her veil over her face, so you could barely see her face, and her head was slumped forward. There was a big red spot on her chest, which was covered in blood. Next to her, there were 2 champagne flutes with champagne in them. The champagne bottle was there as well. There were a couple of lit candles. There were the wedding cake topper from their wedding day, and a long suicide note, or what we later on found out to be a suicide note. And of course, the gun as well, which still had the tag from the gun shop where she had purchased it. So a very new purchase. And it ended up figuring out, sorry, I should continue as well, that the upstairs landing was carpet, and there were footprints, bloody footprints everywhere. And these weren't human footprints, I should say. They were dog footprints. So ended up the story is that the husband and wife were separated and going through a divorce, a pretty nasty divorce apparently. And she had decided to take her life and had gone in front of his bedroom. They had been in separate rooms. So in front of his bedroom and put on her wedding dress and the wedding cake topper and the champagne flutes and all of that, ended up shooting herself in the chest. After she had done that, 2 of the small dogs they had in the house had jumped up on her, I suppose, and gotten their feet into the blood and had ran around the house, getting blood everywhere. So there's footprints everywhere. She was wearing the wedding dress with a gown over her face, and it was like something from the movie. I was the one who had to stand there with the body while waiting for our detectives to get there. And looking back, I feel crappy for making a joke, but I made a joke about, like, she looks like a zombie, to my supervisor. And it really did. It looked like somebody from like a zombie movie. And it was a horrifying experience, and definitely something that I still remember to this day. And I'm sure a lot of you have had crazy stories as well. So I would love to hear them down in the comments, because I want this to be a place where we can share our experiences and really talk about what we've been through. So yeah, these 3 experiences, I can't say I left law enforcement because of the negative things I saw. That definitely isn't the case. But they did make it, it's obviously a factor when you're in law enforcement. After a while, you do get kind of numb to seeing all these terrible things every single day. And that happened to me as well. And it was definitely a thing that maybe motivated me to get into more of the administrative roles. And that which eventually led me to leaving law enforcement altogether. But a lot of officers, they go through some really traumatic things, and they struggle a lot. PTSD is so common in law enforcement. I don't know if the statistics as far as law enforcement compared to the military, but I bet it's very similar. And we in the sheriff's office where I worked, we lost one of our deputies to suicide, unfortunately. So it's a topic that's really near and dear to my heart. And we always at Recruiting Heroes donate 20% of our revenue every year to the PTSD Foundation of America and other charities that help veterans and first responders suffering from PTSD. So if you have anything to give, I'd ask you to consider giving to those type of charities, because I think they can do a lot of good. But yeah, it's a really dark topic today. I know it's a lot of a heavier topic. But I do think it's important for people to understand just what law enforcement officers go through, and that when it's time for them to leave, we shouldn't be judging them because we have no idea what they went through in their career. It could just be that they're sick of the job itself. It could be that they saw some terrible things. It could be a whole host of reasons. But if you are a law enforcement officer considering a transition change to the private sector, I hope you do reach out to us. Again, we're on recruitingheroesllc.com. You can find us on Facebook, on LinkedIn is our most popular place to be active on. We're always looking to help veterans and first responders. We help with resumes, we help with LinkedIn, we help with so much more. And we keep our services way cheaper than most resume writers and other career coaches because we want to help you. And we also do work with companies as well that want to hire veterans and first responders. So we're able to help make a kind of connection between the two and play matchmaker, as you will. So do check us out. But that's really all we have time for today. I hope you enjoyed listening to this episode. Again, please do join me on Thursday at 8 p.m. EST for Careers and Cocktails. Bring your favorite drink. I'm already trying to decide what I want to have. Kind of not really adventurous with drinks. I'm a big Scotch fan. And then the only real cocktail I drink is a gin and tonic now and then as well. So I'm trying to decide what I'll bring on Thursday. But I hope you'll join me on that date. If you want to register, again, go to our website. You can do it there. And I can't wait to see you all in the next video. Bye, guys.